This is a tutorial that's going to explain how to create an onomatopoeia illustration. An onomatopoeia is a word that's associated with a sound, and the one we're going to do for practice is called zap. So I'm going to start by making a new document by going File, New, and we're just going to name it zap. We're actually going to be creating 4 onomatopoeias, but we're starting with zap, so I'm going to name it that and keep the size at letter size, which is 8.5 by 11 inches. I'm going to hit OK, and I'm going to set up our workspace to be most effective by turning on our grid, not perspective grid, but the show grid command. And then I'm going to create a series of rectangles. So I'm going to get my rectangle tool. I'm actually going to make some squares. So I'm going to double click and type in 3.5 by 3.5 and click OK. Now I just want to set up 4 boxes here. And once I do the top 2, I'll just drag them down. And each of these you're going to create a different onomatopoeia with some text and an illustration. So I'm going to leave the boxes here for now. I actually want to make sure they're just an outline. So I'm going to take the fill and create no fill and then go to Object, Lock, Selection. So now you have an unclickable workspace that you can start your project on. So we're going to start by modifying some text. I'm going to take my T tool, click once, and I'm going to push all caps and type in Z-A-P. I'm going to get my black arrow and shift drag nice and big. This is the main feature of my design. I really want it to stand out. So make it big, and I'm going to go into type font and check around for something that I think would be a nice sans serif, easy to work with font that we're going to modify. So I'm going to just go with headline, and notice that right now there's a blue line under the font when I click on it. That means it's still in text mode. So I'm actually going to go up to Type, Create Outlines. And now what I'm left with is just some text, so I can modify this as much as I want. What I really want to do is go Object, Ungroup, and that way, when I click Away, I now have 3 letters. So I'm going to just kind of take each letter and I'm going to tilt it and just kind of make it a little more interesting with each of those spaces. Now I also am going to get my white arrow and activate some of these corners by clicking once with my white arrow. I'm going to make the letter just kind of have a little bit more of a shape to it. You don't always want to modify your text, but in this situation I'm trying to make it a little bit more zippy, zappy. So I'm just kind of changing the shape. So if you're creating a water droplet, you can modify your letters to make them into water droplet shapes. So just kind of reminding you that you can really mess around with the text with a white arrow once you've created outlines. So for now I'm just going to keep it like this, and I'm going to zoom back out, and behind the word zap I'm going to make sort of a spark concept. So to make the spark look, I'm actually just going to take a star tool, and as I drag with my star tool, I'm going to push my up arrow and make kind of a extra point or 2 on a star. I'm going to do that shape, and I'm just going to make it a shade of yellow, nice and bright, and I'm going to send it to back. Feel free to use your keyboard commands whenever possible. I don't usually demonstrate with them because I think it's easier to find them in the menu while you're watching. So I'm going to get my white arrow, and I'm just going to take a moment to rearrange this star shape to be a little bit less calculated, just kind of more of a random shape, something like this. And I'm actually going to duplicate it and rotate it and just have like a double star. In fact, I think I might just create a sort of an upside down version, like so, and then modify that yellow just a little bit. Maybe do more of an orange for the second one. Okay, so I've got my double star. You can keep working with that and pull those points around as much as you want. And my goal was to kind of contain the letters and signs, so I'm just going to pull that a little bigger and move it. Okay, so that was the first step. I wanted to make the word zap. I'm going to group this together, Command G or Object Group, and I'm going to now start creating an illustration to go with it. So I'm going to do a outlet. So I'm going to just start with a rectangle and guesstimate the size, and I'm going to go with a gray. And then to make the shape where the plug goes, I'm actually going to use an ellipse tool, just kind of using my workspace around here a little bit. And I want to cut off the sides of, actually the top of this oval. So I'm going to squeeze it a little bit more, and I need to get my Pathfinder out. So I'm going to go to Window and down to Pathfinder. I find this to be a really helpful tool for cutting shapes and creating new shapes. And I'm going to take a rectangle and just sort of slice off the top and the bottom of this shape. Kind of give it a little chunk there. And I'm going to select all of it and subtract the front. So now I've got kind of more of a plug-in shape to make it a darker gray. And then I'm also going to create these two parts where the prongs would go. I'm going to make those a darker gray and Option drag to the right. And then I want to make a little shape that would go underneath it. So I'm going to use another oval, and I'm going to actually chop that one at the bottom. Just kind of cut it off like so. And again, this is sort of a whimsical illustration. It does not need to be perfectly sized and proportioned. And you may have another version or variation of this that you'd like to try, but this tends to work pretty well to use my Pathfinder. So now that I've got that shape, I'm going to group this one as well, Command G, and I'm going to just put it on the outlet and create two of them. So now I've got an outlet, I've got my zap sparks, and I think I'm going to do a plug, just a really simple design. I think I'll start with a rounded rectangle, and I'll just get a regular rectangle for these two parts here and here. And then I'm going to add a chord, so I'm going to turn that to the side. Maybe I'll make all of this a little bit lighter. Seemed a little bit too dark here. And then I'm going to get I'm just going to use the pencil tool, but before I even use the pencil tool, I will switch and make sure I'm using a stroke instead of a fill. I'm just going to do a little wiggle with that and adjust my stroke weight to be a few points like a chord. And I'm going to send that to back. Not working with layers at all, just keeping it simple. And I'm going to grab the whole chord and sort of position it in my composition to go along with that shape. And I think I'll just rotate it. I don't need it to be actually plugging in. I think I'll do something kind of like this, showing that it's coming down that direction. All right, so I've got my zap and I've got my plug and my cord. I'm going to take zap now and I'm going to shift drag that and bring it to front. And that's supposed to be kind of front and center. So I'm going to put that right in here. And now I just need to create a background for my design. So I'm going to do a couple things. The first thing I'm going to do is throw in a color. I'm just going to go with a soft gradient here. And this is kind of an extreme gradient, but I'm going to go into my gradient settings. Remember that you can go into hide options or show options. And I think I'm going to switch it to a radial gradient. And then I'm going to soften it. I'm going to take out some of these bright reds. And then I'm just going to pull these over and sort of balance it out. It's a nice bright yellow. And then I'm going to create one more square over the top, holding shift to make a perfect square. But this time I'm going to bring up some new patterns by going to swatches and choosing open swatch library, patterns, basic graphics, and I'm going to do textures. This brings up a really cool palette here that has all these different types of shapes that kind of make a little bit more excitement happening. And I think that really goes with the design well. So I'm actually going to drag around both of my backgrounds. So I have them both selected. Object, arrange, send to back together. And that is going to conclude my first onomatopoeia. To zoom back out, I do feel like I could use a little detail on these stars. So I'm going to ungroup this. And I'm going to throw some effects on these stars. I'm going to go Effect down to Stylize and add a drop shadow just to give it a little forward motion here. I'm going to do the same thing on this star, and that is under Effect, Stylize, and Drop Shadow. So your job for this assignment is to come up with 3 more. After you've done the practice onomatopoeia, you're going to design your own 3 in these squares. Try your best to include some sort of text effect and also an illustration and a background with a pattern.